EKKLESIA, Part 2. The audience who will not die until the Son of Man comes in his kingdom.
Previously in Part 1, we discussed the essence of Jesus' teaching in Caesarea Philippi about Hades and the ecclesia in the context of Matthew 16:13 through 28, Mark 8:27 to 9:1, and Luke 9:18 through 27. This time we will discuss the final part of the passage.
Matthew 16:28. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death, till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom.
In fact, there is no standard interpretation of this immortal audience. Most commentators state that the person referred to is the Apostle John, and even then, they are not entirely sure of their own interpretation.
But the Bible clearly denies that this is about John, and that interpretation is far from the context of Jesus' speech there.
John 21, verses 21 to 23, King James. Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do? Jesus saith unto him, If I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. Then went this saying abroad among the brethren, that disciple should not die. Yet Jesus said not unto him, He shall not die, but if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee?
Not dying is a different thing from staying alive. John died, but he will live again to be one of God's two witnesses at the end of time.
Will not die before the Son of Man comes in his kingdom. It is necessary to note that 42 months before the Son of Man comes to earth, he will first raise the saints from the graves in the clouds and rapture the saints who are still alive.
So, in other words, those present who will not die before the coming of the Son of Man to earth are those present who will not be caught up to heaven when the last trumpet sounds.
Let's check the context.
Matthew 16:24 through 27, the King James Version. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works.
So in this case, Jesus invited the ecclesia, especially those in the first century, or perhaps even after the first century, will be discussed in Part 3, to share in the suffering and give up their lives like Jesus.
But among those present, there were those who would not die, saving their lives, but instead gained the whole world until the Son of Man came to repay them for what they had done. We won't just accuse anyone of who he is, but historical facts show that after the saints died and gave up their lives, there remained a community that didn't lose its life but gained the whole world, Roman Christians, or what St. Ignatius called Catholics. And it's true that they, as a congregational organization, have not yet died out and have reached the entire world. However, they are divided, at least broadly, into Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Syriac, and Oriental Orthodox. There's an interesting phenomenon from the prophecy of the book of Revelation.
Revelation 2:13, KJV. I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. And thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth.
This is a letter addressed to the church in Pergamum, a Greek sect prophesied by the prophet Daniel. This is where the church's alliance with the devil began. When Antipas was killed for his faith and testimony, the church at Pergamum was spared their lives without denying their faith in Jesus. How is this possible?
There is a pact between the devil and the church, namely, that they will not be killed without denying their faith in Jesus, but must include in all of Christianity the doctrine of Balaam and the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. Revelation 2:14 and 15.
Balaam's teaching is to sell God's people in exchange for wealth or power, and lead the people astray, which will distance the church from God's help. Is this one of the reasons the early Catholic Church rejected the book of Revelation, while Montanus, the leader of another Christian group outside of Catholicism, relied heavily on the prophecies of the book of Revelation?
And it is worth asking, how could a congregation whose church father was St. Ignatius, who was a direct disciple of the Apostle John, reject one of John's very important writings? And how could the book of Revelation have come into the hands of Montanus if his group were not direct disciples of the apostles? The teachings of Nicolaitans, as I have already mentioned briefly in our previous broadcast, are the Didache book, which at that time was entitled The Teachings of God Through His 12 Apostles to the Nations. All church figures agree that the book was not written by the core apostles, especially since before the Jerusalem Council, one of the apostles, James son of Zebedee, was martyred, leaving only 11 core apostles. And at the council in Jerusalem, it was emphasized that the preaching of the gospel, shepherding, and teaching were delegated to Barnabas and Paul. Although the Bible does not record the development of church figures after the first century, the Bible has prophesied the future fate of the church. But we have historical records of the church that at least have some factual truth, and even if there are many lies in them, even a collection of lies can be analyzed to produce the facts of truth. History is written by the victors. Church history was written mostly by Jerome and Eusebius, who were adherents of adoptionism/homoousios/Arianism, which was the mainstream theology in the church until the 4th century. Although in 325 AD, Athanasius championed the homoousios theology, which later evolved into the Trinity, the Arians lost in their theological argument but won in the power struggle. After the 4th century, the heirs of Arianism disguised themselves as Trinitarians, but the foundations of Arianism were still mixed in. The slogan Tres persona uno substantia, coined by Tertullian, was taken up by the Church but defined differently, as a mixture of homoousios and homoousios. Some important church figures in the 2nd century were Justin Martyr, Clement of Alexandria, Ignatius of Antioch, Polycarp of Smyrna, and Hermas, author of the Shepherd of Hermas. They are known as the Church Fathers or Apostolic Fathers, who lived in the generation after the Apostles and had a major influence on the development of Christian theology and teachings during that time. In addition to these figures, the 2nd century also saw the emergence of several figures later deemed heretics, such as Marcion, Valentinus, and Montanus, whose teachings were rejected by the Church. These figures also influenced church history during that period. Controversial figures like Origen and Tertullian lived in the late 2nd to early 3rd centuries. Hundreds of years later, they were condemned by the Church. The 2nd century church figures who were not condemned as heretics were actually homoousios, who did not recognize the equality of essence between the Son of God and God the Father. Meanwhile, the figures who were condemned or excommuned by the Church hundreds of years after their deaths were actually the pioneers of the canonization of the New Testament and the contributors to the concept of the Trinity. However, it remains questionable whether Origen subscribed to subordinationism. One of Origen's most accomplished students was Athanasius, who opposed the entire church and even the entire world. Thus, the Catholic Church, with its 4 major divisions, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Syriac, and Oriental Orthodox, will remain until the Son of Man comes to avenge their deeds. The most unique of these Orthodox churches is Roman Catholicism. In the book of Revelation, it is described as
Revelation 12:1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. The veil of the sun, the moon under his feet, and the crown of 12 stars represent him disguised as an angel of light, accusing day and night in the name of the 12 apostles. He has descendants who hold both the gospel and the law of God. Revelation 12:17 and 2 Corinthians 11:14.
and a boy holding an iron rod, namely pure evangelical Christianity. His robe was perfectly washed by the blood of the Lamb. Revelation 7:9-14, 12:5. Immediately after birth, he was taken to heaven. These saints will accompany Jesus back to earth to destroy the Antichrist and his followers and establish a 1,000-year kingdom of peace.
The grave of the wicked. For the wicked, the guardian of death is their grave. A grave is also a literal place for the burial of the dead. Matthew 27:60, Mark 15:46. For the wicked, the grave is analogous to the grave which will provide protection from the wrath of the Lord. Isaiah 2:21, 57:5, Jeremiah 16:16, 51:25.
God's revenge against the wicked. At the coming of the Son of Man to punish the wicked, the people of the earth will seek refuge in Hades. Hades is symbolized by Petra, rock in Caesarea Philippi. But God will sweep away that false refuge.
Isaiah chapter 28, verses 15-18, King James Version. Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us, for we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste. Judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet. And the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters shall overflow the hiding place. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it.
The Catholic Church made an agreement with Petra Caesarea Philippi, which they called Purgatory. Its guardian is Mother Mary.
Remember God's message to the congregation who refused to give up their lives, to remain alive, to gain the whole world, until the coming of the Son of Man to take revenge for their actions.
For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here, which shall not taste of death, till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Revelation 18:23. And the light of a lamp will no longer shine in you, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride will no longer be heard in you. For your merchants were princes on the earth. All the nations were deceived by your sorcery.